And I gave the first one to a bunch of my buddies who were working on artificial intelligence at a startup in San Francisco that no one knew anything about. OpenAI is a corporation. Approximately a million-fold boost in computing occurred in 2022, 10 years after AlexNet. What would it be like if your laptop had a million times more capabilities, if you could only imagine? AI became widely used after OpenAI introduced ChatGPT a million-fold later. This decade saw Nvidia change from a graphics firm that most of you likely first recognized as a manufacturer of GPUs to an AI company that today manufactures enormous supercomputers the size of data centers. We drastically changed our business. We also revolutionized computers. Today, computing is done in a fundamentally different way. Instead of using CPUs to handle programmers' commands, the computing stack now uses GPUs to process huge language models that are trained on supercomputers. These days, we are developing software that is impossible for humans to write. We are presently developing software that even 10 years ago was unthinkable to humans. Instead of being instruction-driven, computers are now intention-driven. A computer will figure out what you want if you tell it. It will figure out how. Additionally, AI applications will comprehend the goal, rationalize, organize, and coordinate a group of huge language models to do jobs, just like people do. Applications of the future will carry out activities in a manner that is very similar to our own. They will put together teams of specialists, use tools, reason, plan, and carry out missions. The capabilities of software have fundamentally changed. Even our industry, which is undergoing upheaval and transformation, has given rise to a brand new industry that has never existed before. We are witnessing the formation of an industry. Tokens are AI input and output. You understand, all of you engineers in the room. These are intelligence-encoded floating-point numbers. Businesses are currently constructing a brand new kind of data center that was previously non-existent, one that is dedicated to creating intelligence tokens. In essence, AI factories, similar to the AC generators developed by Nikola Tesla during the previous Industrial Revolution. The factories of a new Industrial Revolution will be the AI token generators that we already have. Electricity and energy are produced by major industries. These days, a sizable industry produces software, which is undetectable. We will have industries that produce and manufacture intelligence tokens and AI generators in the very near future. Because we reasoned from the ground up, developed our convictions about the future, and took action on them, a new computer model and industry have emerged. Robotics is the next wave of artificial intelligence, where AI has a physical world model in addition to a language model. We collaborate with hundreds of businesses to construct humanoid robots, robotic vehicles, pick-and-place arms, robots, and even whole massive robotic warehouses. However, our robotics journey was the consequence of a string of failures, in contrast to our AI factory plan and our experience there, which were truly shaped by reasoning and purposeful action. The GPU was created by Nvidia, as you are aware. This was prior to the development of AI factories. Using programmable shaders to redefine computer graphics was our first significant contribution to the computer industry. In 2000, we created programmable shading and the GPU. We started integrating our GPUs with motherboard chips because we intended to make GPUs a part of every computer. We also introduced an amazing integrated graphics processor for AMD CPUs. Our chipset company took off right away. I believe it went from nothing to $1 billion almost in a single day. However, AMD suddenly wanted to take over all of the PC's technology, and we wanted to maintain our independence. They no longer required our services after they acquired ATI. We looked to Intel. We went to Intel and negotiated a license to connect to Intel CPUs, even though it probably wasn't a good idea. Excited by what we were creating, Apple asked us to collaborate with them on a new machine, which eventually became the original MacBook Air. Intel ended our arrangement after realizing what had happened and deciding they no longer wanted us to accomplish it. We turned around once more and went ahead and licensed ARM this time. We created the world's first SoC that was really a computer, a fully functional computer, a low-power, mobile SoC, and it was amazing. Google was so impressed with our semiconductor that they requested us to develop a new product, which ended up being the Android smartphone. Qualcomm decided they didn't want us to connect to their modems because they didn't want us to do that. Additionally, developing a mobile device without a modem is challenging. We were forced to leave the mobile device industry since there were no other LTE modem companies. This essentially occurred on an annual basis. 1 year later, we would be expelled from those markets after building something that was tremendously successful and created a great deal of enthusiasm. We chose to construct something where we were certain there would be no clients since we had run out of markets to choose from. One of the things you can be certain of is that no one cares about you. There are no competitors, and there are no consumers. Therefore, we decided to focus on robots, a business worth $0 billion and devoid of consumers. We created the first robotics computer in history, using deep learning, an approach that no one understood at the time. It was more than 10 years ago. 10 years later, I'm ecstatic about what we've accomplished and the chance to develop the next generation of artificial intelligence. More significantly, we fostered a resilient culture and increased agility. We bounced back from each setback and moved on to the next one. Every time, we improved our abilities and fortified our moral fiber. We improved the corporate image. Distracting and discouraging our company is really difficult. These days, every obstacle we encounter seems like an opportunity. Ironically, our adventure began because the robot's computer we designed today doesn't even require graphics. Our current location teaches and tells us something. Richard Feynman once said, "The world is uncertain. It can also be unjust and provide you with difficult cards. Shake it off quickly. If you require any other changes, please let me know." Yes, I did just say that AMD should be treated as a separate business. Although there is some overlap in their functions, Nvidia has a clear advantage when it comes to AI spending on GPUs and Blackwell. That's just the way things are. Therefore, in my opinion, catch-up is not a mathematically sound strategy. Well, if it doesn't tell the narrative, I'm not sure what does. What does Jason Snipe do? Since you own both Qualcomm and Nvidia, you tell me. I take it you don't own AMD. You don't need to tell that story because it's not particularly interesting. Scott, I don't necessarily think so. It goes without saying that the price action conveys a tale. And it was obviously a light guide, I believe. The guidance wasn't terrific, but it was a rough quarter. I mean, they beat on the top and bottom, whatever. And I believe that when you go back at ASML and their earnings, which were also ugly, and then you see what happened with Taiwan Semi, whose stock I know is owned by Wise, and it was a blowout, it just goes to show that there are a select few businesses who are truly succeeding in this market. And Nvidia, well, let's just call it that. You have a stock that was over a third higher than Nvidia at the beginning of the quarter, at 80 times trailing PE. They don't expand as quickly. They're still more costly than Nvidia now. And that price will go up next year. What were people thinking then? This trade is solely based on momentum. No matter how excellent Lisa Su is as a CEO, I have no reason to think she isn't. This isn't her fault, and I do like and respect her. It might be her fault that she caught the GPU wave a bit too late. CPUs are still crucial though. The point is that, given that Nvidia is currently selling at a lower valuation, it was foolish to own this stock at that price. I own Nvidia, so I know they're both overpriced, but I'm not sure what folks were thinking. And we'll discuss a healthcare organization that might be in a similar situation. It still doesn't make sense. It's AMD. Let's talk about two topics. Since you mentioned the spend's beneficiaries, let me ask you a question before I go on to Meta. What's AMD up to? That stock of yours is having a bad day. I think it's reasonable to say that it's striving to catch up. As an actual owner of this stock, what do you think? The internal discussion is that AMD is doing really well, assuming you weren't looking at the results from Nvidia and other companies. It's developing nicely.